Hi and welcome, I'm Toby from abletondrummer.com and I will show you how to install and all the functions of the SPD-SX Session Control Max for Live device. You will need Max for Live, which is included in the Ableton Live Suite version or can be bought as an add-on for Ableton Live Standard to use this Max for Live device. So first you need to make a connection from your SPD-SX to your computer. So there are three different ways to do this. You can use a USB connection from the SPD-SX to your computer. You can use a MIDI connection like an old school MIDI cable like this one. Old school because it's quite often now MIDI goes via USB now. That's why I said old school. So a 5-pin MIDI cable, or you might have one of those which is like a MIDI 5-pin MIDI to USB MIDI adapter cable. So let's start with the first one. If you want to use a USB connection, you need to install the driver. The links are in the written out manual and the PDF manual. And you need to set a few things in your SPD-SX to use this connection. So you need to go into your menu on your SPD-SX. You just press menu, you need to select setup, you press enter, and then you need to scroll down to options, and there you will have the USB mode. And this is per default set to the wave manager. So this is the way to load samples onto your SPD-SX. But you want to set this to audio and MIDI. If you're completely new to this, please check out my online course about the SPD-SX with Ableton Live, where I show all different connections there are and you can make with your SPD-SX to Ableton Live. Okay, so if you have set this up, you can just plug in a USB into your SPD-SX and into your computer, and then it will show up as a MIDI port, the SPD-SX. Okay, so let's set up the different connection here. Let's leave the menu for now, because if you're doing a different connection here, you won't need to change the USB driver settings in your SPD-SX. So if you have, for example, a Focusrite or a different external sound card where you have a MIDI in socket, a 5-pin DIN MIDI in socket, you can use a MIDI cable to plug it into the out port on your SPD-SX. So this MIDI goes out of your SPD-SX and goes in to your external audio interface. Yes, the third option would be, and that's the one I'm gonna use for this video, is just using a USB to MIDI. So this one goes into the MIDI out of my SPD-SX, sending MIDI out from the SPD-SX, and this one goes into my computer. Okay, the next thing you would need to check is if your MIDI routing in Ableton Live is set right. So you can go to your preferences, and under link tempo MIDI, you will find all the different MIDI ports, so the different MIDI ins and outs. So in my case, I'm using this USB to MIDI converter, which is called the Easy MIDI Mate. And I'm using port 1 of this one. So I need to make sure that this track in is activated. We won't need the remote here now. If you're using the SPD-SX USB connection, SPD-SX would be written here. And you need to make sure that the track in is turned to on. So that's all the MIDI active MIDI ports we need for now. So let's leave this menu, and you can see when I'm hitting my SPD-SX, I'm receiving MIDI in Ableton Live, and I got this MIDI indicator here, which will be then flashing up. Cool. So so far that's all you need to do for the MIDI routing. Okay, so now you just need to install and save the Session Control Max for Live device. I prefer to save all third-party Max for Live devices in my user library. You can just open up your live browser, you navigate to your user library, and there you can set up a folder where you want to store stuff. It's just a really nice way to keep things clear and sorted and not to miss devices when you're opening them up later on. So you need to locate the downloaded AMXD file. That's the file format for Max for Live devices. So that's the one you downloaded when you bought the device, and you can just drag and drop it somewhere in a dedicated folder you made, or just in the big folder here. And I have lots of stuff in here, you can see. So let's navigate to the SPD-SX device, and there it is. So now you can just drag and drop this if you want to use it onto an empty space or onto a MIDI track you created, and it will load, and then you have the device there, you are ready to use it. Okay, so let's go through the device. Obviously, the device needs to sit on a MIDI track, and it needs to receive the MIDI from your SPD-SX. So we need to make sure that the MIDI is routed into this track. So to keep things clean, I highly advise you to just select the MIDI port here you're using. So if you're using the USB connection from your SPD-SX, SPD-SX would be accessible here now. In my case, I'm using this ESI MIDI-Mate MIDI-to-USB converter, so I need to select this. So now this track and the device which is sitting on this track is only receiving from this one MIDI port, which is actually my SPD-SX. So you want to set the monitor to in. That's one way of routing the MIDI to this track. Or you can arm it as well if you want to record MIDI, but in most cases you just want to set this to in. Okay, so now you can check as well if MIDI is being received here on this track. You have a few indicators here. You can see the indicator here and an indicator down below here. So MIDI is being received in this track, and you're ready to set up the device. Okay, so let's have a look on the device itself. You can just drag and drop it onto an empty MIDI track. And once it's loaded, you can open up the main window view here. And it will open on my second screen as I'm doing a screencast here, but it will open up somewhere around here. And you can save the position for this device. So if you want it to be sitting here, you can save it here by just pressing the S. You can move it where you want it to be and just press S, and then the position will be saved automatically. So you get a second button here which will open up the trigger input view. Yeah, so you can use the device with different MIDI controllers sending MIDI notes. This UI is designed for the SPD-SX, the Roland SPD-SX, and as the Roland SPD-SX has 4 mono trigger inputs, you get those 4 mono trigger inputs being shown here as well. You can use them as stereo as well, but it's still like the single notes will be then translated like input 1 would be 1 and 2, and input 2 would be 3 and 4. Okay, so in some cases you might save the window, like I'm using here, the window position on a second screen. And if I just open up this Ableton Live set with the device stored in here and with the window position which isn't available, this might lead to the window not showing up. So you have this reset window position button here, and if you click on that, it will always jump back to the initial Windows position. In my case, at the moment right here now, as I'm doing a screencast on a second screen here, it jumps to my second screen, which you can't see. Okay, so you have one more button here, which is the non-selected notes through. So if you are using some notes here from your SPD-SX which shouldn't be used by functions you can set up here, maybe to play some notes differently, you can actually activate this, and non-used notes which you are not using for this device here will be passed through. This will make a little bit more sense once you've set this up and if you have an actual use case for that. So per default this is set to this is deactivated, so that means only notes which are activated in the device itself will be used and all other notes are being blocked and not going through. So you need to train the device to receive the right MIDI note pitches from your SPD-SX. Make sure you remember the kit you are using here for the particular Ableton Live set, because different MIDI note values can be set up according to the kit which is selected on your SPD-SX. So for example, I picked number 20 here. I named it to MIDI 1, and I now just need to go into my device. I activate the note input here, and now you can see you get, like for every pad and for the triggers as well, you get a note input you need to switch on if you want to use this pad here, and you can put in the right MIDI note pitch value here, which this pad should react to. It makes a little bit more sense if I just use the sync function here. So and now this pad is waiting for the right MIDI note pitch to be sent from this pad here. So I just hit this pad once and it's detected. I've done this with those two here as well. Let's use one I haven't done. So I just hit this one here and do the next one as well. And so this way I'm training the device to note and to see which MIDI pitch note values are coming in, and I can test those. So if I leave the note in menu here, you can see you will get a flashing up monitor here. So just to make sure that this pad is being mapped to the right pad in the device as well. Please make sure that you don't use like the same values, MIDI note pitch values for the different pads. So if this one is set to C1 here as well, so you can see both pads are now being triggered, and you don't actually want this in like 99% of the probable of the usual use cases here. So let's have a look on the different functions each pad can trigger. So this is seen like a horizontal line here can be triggered by this pad, or just one clip, or a particular note value, note pitch value. Okay, so let's start with the scenes here. So let's set up a few scenes, or just name those. First, maybe second and third. And if I put in the right names here, that would make sense. So let's set up a few tracks here as well. So just that we have this here. So let's make this a bit bigger so my video will be shown in here as well. Okay, so I just put in a few clips here so that the scene actually will play. So if I want to map a scene to this pad, I just can press the D for detect, and I first want to select the scene I want to map. So let's select the first scene here, click D for detect, and you can see it's already detecting this scene here. And now if I hit this pad here, you can see the first scene is being triggered. So let's do this with more pads here. Let's take the second, set this up for scene, press detect, second is detected, and let's press D here, select the third scene. So now those three pads down here will trigger first, second and third scene. That's how easy it is to set up. You can check your functions here as well. If your SPD-SX or your MIDI controller is not around, you can as well click on those number buttons down here below, the red ones, and they will trigger the currently selected action as well. Triggering clips is set up a really similar way. So let's set those all to clips, and let's name the clips. First clip, let's name it clips so we are not getting confused with the scenes. Second clip and third clip. So I highly advise you to name those clips and name them right, because if you have a huge set in the end you're using for backing tracks or for some other stuff, it will help you to know actually which clip you are triggering here and you can monitor this via the name. So the same works here. I select the clip I want to map to this pad, press detect, or I can press detect first and then select the clip I want to use, and do this with the third one here as well. And now I can monitor this. Yeah, it's all being triggered, starting on the next one, and with the pads as well. So this is how setting up clips to a pad works. Next function which is possible is to set up different note pitches to be triggered according to the state preset, I call it, in the device here. So you can actually select different MIDI notes here. You can set those via your mouse. Just click on the field, turning it up or down, or use your arrows from your computer keyboard, or just type in the value you want to use. So this is really for understanding how this works or how this can be used. We gonna have a look into the concept of presets and states here now. So different states would mean you have different up to 128 presets and steps you could set up here. So each pad can perform 128 different things here. So for example, you want in state number 1, preset number 1, the first pad to trigger scene 1, and in the next state you want it to trigger the second scene, and so on and so forth, or a different MIDI note according to every different preset here. So to set up a preset, you can just select the preset, then put in the stuff you want to do here. So let's do this. So let's say the first pad should trigger scene number 1. Let's do this real quick again. So we are setting this one up to trigger scene number 1 in state number 1. So maybe let's call this preset 1 for now. So you can type in text down here and press enter, and then the name for this preset will be stored here. So if I go one value up to the next preset, let's call the second preset or song. And you can see here you can't have huge names, which is sometimes good to do. So let's change this again to second song, maybe like this, so that fits. Okay, so let's set this first pad up here again for triggering scene number 2 in the song number 2. Let's turn those off for now so it's really obvious. So let's go to the third preset, so I can move and select presets with this dial here, or by using those arrows here to go one preset down, one preset up. So now I'm selecting the third preset here. Third press. So you can see the names are being stored here. And I now want to select scene number 3 for the pad, for this same pad here. So now, depending on which state here is selected, this pad will perform different actions here. Yeah. Okay, so now let's set this up for clips on the next pad here. So for example, I want in preset number 1, I want the first clip to be triggered, preset number 2, the second clip to be triggered, and 3, I want the third one to be triggered. So let's set this up. I select clip here because I want a clip function, and this is set globally for all presets. It can be changed as well, this function here, but it needs to be done via MIDI clip automations, which I will explain later. So let's set this up clip. Let's set up the clips function here. So let's select the right preset. So I want to go and preset number 1. I want the first MIDI clip to be triggered. So let's press D for detect here. Let's select the next clip here. Go to the right preset. Press D again, so now you can see second clip, the right name is being selected. Go to the third preset here now and press detect again. Maybe if I made a mistake, I got a clear button here as well, so I can clear things as well. So now I need to reselect this bomb, and I have the third clip here being now mapped to this pad in my third preset. So now you can see if I'm changing to my preset number 1, I'm hitting this pad, it's triggering clip number 1, going to a different preset, clip number 2, and clip number 3. And obviously this is monitored here, and I can see what action will be triggered according to the name which is shown here. So the same goes for notes as well. So let's do this on the third pad here. So maybe I want a C1 for the first preset. And this is like interesting if you have different sounds you want to be triggered on the same track. So if you have, let's real quickly do this. If we are just putting a drum rack here, we're just going to use an empty one for now. I have a drum rack on this track here, and maybe let's say in the first song I want a C1 to be triggered by this pad. So this is what it's happening now, and I can see this is being lightening up. You can't see this that well. Let's take a note length for now to just show you that it's really lightening up, because the MIDI notes are so short so that it won't light up that long. So let's set this to maybe around 1.5 seconds. So if I'm hitting this pad, you can see the C1 is lightening up. And this is the note I'm currently putting out via this pad. So if I have a sound in my C1 here, this will be triggered. So if I'm going to the second preset, let's set this to C#1. So if I'm now hitting this pad, you can see a C#1 is being triggered. So this could be a different sound, a different part of your Ableton Live set. And the same goes for the next one, third preset. Let's put in a D1, so it's chromatically going up. So if I'm hitting this now, you can see the D1 is now being triggered. Yeah, so depending on which preset is actually being selected here, I'm playing a different MIDI note via the same pad. And this all works for sessions, for clips, and for MIDI notes. So you get a lot of control. Like each pad can control 128 different things here, depending on which preset, which state I call this, is being selected. So you now might ask yourself, but how do I change between those different states here? So actually you are able to do this in various ways, and that's depending on your full band setup and who's controlling that. So One example is you can use the external MIDI map function here. So you can use the MIDI remote access here for external MIDI controllers to control the state dial as well, or the arrow up, arrow down. Let's do this really quickly with the key function here as well. So let's use and map my 1 and 2 maybe to going up and down. So I use number 1 and number 2 from my MIDI keyboard. I have to leave the key map menu here again. You can do this via the MIDI map menu with a MIDI controller. So now if I'm pressing my button 2 and my button my key 1 and 2 here, I can cycle through those different presets here. So you can set this up as well via direct MIDI note input. So you can use your some pads here as well, going directly into the device, into the track here. So if you select note in again, you can see you have 2 note inputs here. You can select and you can sync those. So let's quickly do this via those 2 pads here. So now if I leave the note in menu again, you can see those arrows are being triggered by my pads here as well. So that's another function here as well. You can use as well, and that's very special to the SPD-SX, you can use the master audio effect buttons here, because they can send MIDI as well. But first you need to activate. Let's quickly do this on the SPD-SX here. You need to go into menu, you need to go into setup, you need to select MIDI, and there you need to go to the CTRL control tab here, and on the 3rd row you have master effect select CC, and you first need to switch them on in the 2nd row. I forgot that. So you need to switch the CC receive and send TX and RX switch. You need to set this to on, and then you go into the 3rd row, and there you need to define on which MIDI CC number values should be sent. You need to remember this number. I usually use number 4. Exit this, and now you need to set activate this on the device, on the Max for Live device as well. You select note in here, and then you need to switch on the FX button here, and you need to put in the same MIDI control change number here. So in my case, this is number 4. If you select number 4, that's fine as well. So we can switch those on. So this to off again, the note inputs. Let's deactivate the note input view. And now my filter and delay buttons here will trigger state up and state down. So this is really the only thing which is only working on the SPD-SX, because you have those buttons here and they are set to a certain MIDI value being sent on a definable MIDI control change number. This is the number 4 I used here. So you can now actually change presets via your SPD-SX with one button here going up and down. Another cool feature here is if you only use, let's say, 3 states like we're doing here in this example, you can set this down to 3 here, number of states. So when I'm now reaching number 3 and go 1 up, it jumps to the first one again. So I'm just cycling through 3 different states here now. So in some use cases, you want changes of states to be automated, so they should change without external MIDI coming from you. Maybe you select a different scene or something, so you can set this up to change automatically as well via MIDI dummy clips. So let us do this. So on the track itself where the device sits, you can create a MIDI clip, an empty MIDI clip, you just by double clicking on an empty MIDI clip slot. So this looks a little bit different in Ableton Live 10. You need to go to the envelope section. In 11 you need to select the envelope view here. So now you can select the state dial parameter here, and you can set a breakpoint here by just clicking on the red line, and you can move this up or down depending on which state you want to select. So let's set the tempo down here a little. So if I now start this clip, you can see the state is automatically being selected here. The different state is automatically being selected here. So in most use cases, what you want to do is you actually just want one breakpoint. You don't want a loop, because you usually just want this to happen once. So you can set this, for example, down to 2. So let's name this clip here 2. Let's create another clip, just duplicate it by Command D, and let's set this to 1. So for example, if this scene or this clip is now being triggered, it will select the right state you set here. So if we fold this down a little just to make things a bit more obvious. So let's say I am with a different MIDI controller or with the SPD-SX itself, I'm selecting this scene here. So what happens now is this clip here is being played, this dummy MIDI clip, and is selecting the second preset on the device here. So now all the different notes, clips, etc. I set up for this preset for the state here are being activated now or being selected. And if I fire the second scene here, you can see the first clip is being, or the according clip, the clip sitting in this scene is being triggered, and it will trigger the state change here. So if we just do this via this clips here, you can see if this clip is being fired, it selects the second preset, and the same for the first preset if we fire the other clip here. Okay, so as I said earlier in this video, you're able to change the function of one pad. So let's focus on one pad only. So let's say we have this one pad here, which we want to trigger a scene, and later on we want it to trigger a clip. So usually most use cases would be fine, most users would be fine to just set one global function for one pad for a whole Ableton Live set. Just makes, for most use cases, that just makes sense. So let's say this pad here should only trigger scenes. So via setting this function here to scenes, this will stay for the whole Ableton Live set like this. However, in some use cases, this might change, and you want this same pad to trigger a scene and to trigger later on different clips. So what you want to do now is, so let's clear this all for now so it's a little bit more obvious. Let's delete the state dummy clips change here for now, and let's clear all those different things we have in here just to set this up real clean. Okay, so we now only have this one pad here, which is triggering number 7 and number 5 as well. Let's make this right. Let's turn this off for now. Okay, so only number 7 pad is mapped to this pad here. C1 is a MIDI node, so we can monitor this here. So let's say this should be trigger the scene in the first part of your set. So we want to make sure to set an audio dummy clip up here. Just double click on an empty clip slot, deselect the loop. Most cases you won't need the loop, and you have different parameters here for every pad and for the trigger inputs here as well. So you first need to find the right parameter. So by just clicking on that, you can see it already selects the right parameter here. We are on pad 7 and we want the pad selector is called, selecting the different function here. And you can see when I'm moving over this red line here, I could set a breakpoint to do different things. So I can set it to off, scene, clip, or note. So let's say we want this to trigger a scene. This is the function here. And then later on, we want it to trigger a clip. So let's name those dummy clips again. Scene. And let's duplicate this one. Let's set it down here maybe. And let's call this clip. And let's set the envelope, the automation here on this clip to scene. So just moving the breakpoint one up, you just hold your mouse down on the breakpoint and then you can scroll your mouse up, move it up, and this way you will select the different function here. So if I'm triggering this second clip here now, you can see it selects a clip function here. And if I'm triggering scene, it will trigger a scene function here according on the automation you set up here. So this way a pad is not set globally to one function only anymore. You can go really deep and quite modular here and having different pads doing different things like scene, clip, or note, or turn them off, for example, later on in the set. So as I said in the beginning of this video, this is more like a video manual on how to use all the different functions. If you want to put it into a practical concept here, this might be at some places too much of an information. So please check out those other videos here where I show you a more faster and quick start guide on for different use cases on how to set up the SPD-SX Session Control device. Okay, so I have a few more devices, Max for Live devices for the SPD-SX, especially for the SPD-SX, and please check out my newsletter, my homepage, etc. If you have more questions, I do online teaching as well. So if you have some special wishes here, just ask me. Maybe I have made a Max for Live device for that already, and I can maybe help you solving your problems. Okay, cool. Take care.